Her future mattered. Mine never had. My father said it clearly enough that the entire room went still. Conversation stopped halfway through, forks froze midair, and even the overhead lights seemed to hum louder as every gaze turned toward me. My sister masked a grin behind her straw. My mother kept slicing her steak, focused on the plate like the moment wasn't real. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I only tightened my hold on the folder pressed against my leg, the one they all believed was meaningless. They thought his words would crush me in front of everyone. They didn't know someone else was paying attention that night. I learned young that silence made life easier. It kept the house balanced. It kept tension from splitting the walls. It kept me exactly where they wanted me. Quiet, convenient, unseen. When I was 8, Tessa had a meltdown over a toy she wanted, the same toy I'd saved my birthday money to buy. She screamed until her throat went raw. Dad walked in, glanced at her flushed face, then at me, and said, "Give it to her. You're older. Act like it." He never asked what was fair. He never asked whose it was. He just extended his hand. I remember setting the toy into his palm, my fingers sliding away inch by inch, like I was learning how to release something without protest. Tessa ran off happily. No one turned around. By middle school, the pattern didn't need explaining. It was understood. When I brought home perfect grades, I left the report card on the counter, waiting for acknowledgement. Minutes later, Tessa burst in with flyers for her dance recital. Mom squealed. Dad applauded. The flyers went straight onto the fridge. My report card disappeared beneath grocery coupons and stayed there for weeks. One afternoon I found it creased, a coffee ring stained in the corner. I didn't mention it. I smoothed it out and slid it into a folder in my room. Holding it felt like evidence that something I did had value, even if only to me. High school made everything sharper. I worked part-time at a diner, hiding tips in a jar under my bed. It wasn't much, wrinkled bills and greasy coins, but it belonged to me. I planned to use it for college applications no one encouraged me to submit. One Saturday morning I came home and found the jar empty. Mom stood at the sink washing dishes like nothing had changed. When I asked, she didn't look up. "Your sister needs new shoes for her competition. You'll be fine. You always are." My throat tightened, but I nodded. Fighting back never helped. It only turned me into the problem. Dad had a talent for making Tessa's dreams sound inevitable and mine sound inconvenient. If she needed a ride, I drove. If she wanted money, I figured it out. If she failed, someone else was at fault. If I slipped once, the blame landed squarely on me. I learned to predict needs before they were spoken, to apologize for things I hadn't done, to fade away before I became an annoyance. Responsibility came naturally, not because I was grown, but because they made me carry what she dropped. Some nights I sat on the hallway floor, listening to laughter drift from the living room. They'd be watching a movie, celebrating something Tessa achieved, or planning her next audition. I lingered near the stairs, waiting for an invite that never came. Sometimes Dad would glance over, then pull the door partway shut, cutting me out of view. I'd stand there a moment longer until their happiness buzzed painfully in my chest. Then I'd turn away. The hardest part wasn't the favoritism. It was how ordinary it became. How every dismissal and expectation settled into habit. I stopped asking to be noticed. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped believing there was room for me at any table, family or otherwise. Looking back, there wasn't one breaking point. It was the slow erosion of worth over years, until I learned the lesson they needed me to accept. I wasn't meant to take up space in that house, and for a long time I didn't. The morning of the interview felt different. Calm, steady, almost gentle. I woke before sunrise, pressed my blazer, laid the folder on my bed, rehearsed answers under my breath. For once, the quiet in the house didn't feel heavy. It felt like the day might finally tilt my way. Then Tessa appeared in my doorway, iced drink in hand, sunglasses still on though we were inside. "I need you to drive me to the mall by noon," she said like she was booking a service. "I can't," I replied, zipping my portfolio. "My interview's at 12:30. She blinked, confused not by what I said, but by the idea that it mattered. "Take me first. Just reschedule." I looked at her. "I'm not canceling my job interview to take you shopping." The words hung between us, strange and unfamiliar, like a language this house didn't understand. Her jaw tightened. She didn't argue. She just said, "I'll tell Dad." He appeared less than 2 minutes later, footsteps heavy, expression set like he'd been waiting for permission to erupt. He didn't ask questions. He didn't listen. He pointed at me. "What's this? You won't take your sister where she needs to go." "I have an interview," I said softly. "It matters." He laughed, sharp and loud, the kind that fills a room and drains it all at once. Then he said it. Her future mattered. Mine never did. The words landed before his hands. He shoved me hard enough that my back slammed into the hallway wall. A picture frame shattered behind me, glass scattering across the floor. Pain shot through my shoulder. Tessa watched from the counter, chewing gum like she was bored. Mom walked in, saw me on the floor, and sighed as if I'd inconvenienced her. "Why do you always cause trouble?" No one helped me up. No one asked if I was hurt. Dad stepped closer, blocking the exit, waiting for me to give in. But something inside me shifted, quiet and irreversible. I picked up my keys, brushed glass from my sleeve, and headed for the door. He moved to stop me. This time I didn't pause. I walked past him. Outside, the air was sharp enough to sting, but it was the first breath that felt like my own. I walked down the driveway, cracks in the pavement blurring beneath my feet, his shouting fading behind a door he couldn't follow me through anymore. I didn't look back. I kept going until the house vanished, and the shaking in my hands wasn't fear. It was the shock of choosing myself. Harper arrived exactly when she said she would, her silver SUV idling, window lowering to reveal the same steady, alert expression she'd worn the first night I cried in our college dorm, already thinking ahead. "What did they do?" she asked as I got in. I buckled my seatbelt. "They tried to stop me." "He pushed me," he said. I paused, swallowing the echo. He said my future never mattered. She didn't gasp or ask questions. She tightened her grip on the wheel. "Then we'll make sure they never get near your future again." The drive downtown felt unreal. My blazer was creased where his hands had gripped it. A thin scratch marked my shoulder, and my chest still ached where the breath had been knocked out of me. But Harper stayed calm, her voice steady as she ran through practice questions, straightened my collar, pressed a bottle of water into my hand, acting like this was just another normal errand instead of the rebuilding of my entire life. The lobby of the tech company smelled of polished stone and chilled air. Fluorescent lights bounced off glass walls, making everything feel sharper and cleaner, like a place where people were allowed to begin again. I sat through the interview with a stillness I didn't recognize. 47 minutes. 3 interviewers. I answered every question as if I'd been preparing my whole life, which in a way I had. When I stepped back outside, Harper smiled and said, "I told you." Then my phone buzzed and shattered the moment. Message after message from Tessa. "You ruined everything. Dad is furious. You better come home now. If I miss this meetup because of you, don't bother showing your face again. Hope that stupid interview rejects you." I typed one sentence back. "I'm not coming home." We drove to Harper's apartment, a small, warm place overlooking a quiet street. She handed me a towel, a clean t-shirt, and told me to breathe. In the bathroom mirror, I watched the bruise rise along my shoulder, blooming like a stranger's fingerprint. For a second, I felt 8 again, then 12, then 16, waiting for someone in that house to care. They never did, and this time I wasn't waiting. Later that night, Harper came into the living room with her laptop open, her face pale, not scared but furious. "You need to see this," she said, turning the screen toward me. An internal HR chat, a forwarded recruiter memo, a voicemail transcription. It took a moment to register that it was about me. Then the words locked into place. My father had called, claimed I was unstable, said I attacked him, warned them I was dangerous to hire. My ribs went numb. He hadn't just tried to control me. He tried to erase me before I could even start. "He called them again tonight," Harper said quietly. Left another voicemail. They forwarded it because he referenced his job title and the board he sits on. That's a policy violation. Several, actually. She tapped the folder she'd already printed. Recruiter notes, voicemail recordings, Tessa's texts, a full timeline of interference. "He crossed lines he legally can't cross," she said. "And we're going to use that." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. The feeling was colder than either. It settled deep in my stomach, heavy and exact, like the first touch of a blade. "What do we do?" I asked. Harper opened a blank document, clean and clinical, the kind no one could accuse of exaggeration. "First," she said, "we file with corporate compliance at the tech company. Everything factual, everything attached. Then we send a formal notice to your dad's firm. They won't be able to ignore it." I nodded. We started. Typed, saved, attached, documented, indexed, forwarded. No emotion. Just the quiet tapping of keys, the soft click of the mouse, the heater humming beneath the window. While we worked, Dad called 6 times. Each voicemail angrier, messier, more threatening than the last. I didn't listen. Harper saved every one. At midnight, the final email was ready. Subject line formal. Complaint clear. External interference with hiring process. 8 attachments. CC'd HR compliance, legal, and the oversight committee at my father's firm. Harper paused with her finger over the trackpad. "You ready?" I thought about the cracked frame in the hallway, the bruise on my shoulder, the years of silence, the sentence he delivered like a verdict. "Her future matters. Yours never did." "Yes," I said. She clicked send. The email left the outbox, and something inside me loosened. Not happiness, not victory, just a slow breath I'd been holding for years. "I'm not fixing what they break," I said quietly. Harper nodded. "Good. Because this time, they're the ones who won't recover." Outside, the street was dark and still. Inside, for the first time in my life, everything was finally moving. The first response came faster than we expected. 24 hours after Harper sent the email, a message arrived from the tech company's compliance team. The subject line was brief and neutral, but it shifted the air in the apartment the moment we read it. Under review. They requested a call. Not with me, but with their internal board. Harper read it twice and looked up. "They're taking this seriously. They have to." Over the next few days, everything moved like a quiet avalanche, slow at first, then unstoppable. Another email arrived from HR, this one heavier than the usual polished apology. It referenced serious interference, ethical violations, and the need to protect candidate safety. One line stood out in bold. "No further calls from non-applicants will be accepted." It was the first boundary anyone had ever drawn for me. 2 days later, the tech company contacted my father's firm directly. Not discreetly, not gently. A compliance inquiry demanding explanation for why a senior advisor had contacted another corporation's HR department multiple times, misrepresented a candidate, and referenced his board position. Corporate language is its own kind of force, quiet and unavoidable, leaving no room to twist out of it. One inquiry triggered another. By the end of the week, my father's firm opened a mandatory internal review. Harper showed me the notice when it leaked. A short internal message. External complaints received. Advisory privileges temporarily suspended. Pending investigation. Suspended. One word. It landed harder than any shove ever had. I didn't call home. I didn't need to. The silence from that house stretched across days, tightening like a wire. Then my mother called. Afternoon voice sharp, controlled, the tone she used when something slipped beyond her grip. "Your father is in trouble," she said. No greeting. No concern for me. "Someone reported him. They're saying he violated policies. We need you to fix this. Tell them you exaggerated or misunderstood or something." I stared at my phone as she spoke. The washing machine hummed nearby. Sunlight cut a warm line across the floor. The calm around me didn't match her panic at all. "I'm not fixing anything," I said. She inhaled sharply. "Bailey, listen." "No," I said. "You listen. This to him. He did this to himself." She tried to cry next, but it sounded hollow, rehearsed, like an old script worn threadbare. I ended the call. The following week brought the blow they never anticipated. A letter arrived at the house, short, formal, and personal. I didn't see it, but Harper received a photo from a mutual contact inside the firm. The letterhead said it all. Effective immediately. Contract terminated. Breach of ethical standards. Removal from external advisory committee. Everything they thought they controlled, every connection they flaunted to justify cruelty, vanished with a single. Investigation. By noon, Dad's nameplate was gone from his office door. Someone whispered. Someone else reported seeing him leave early, shoulders rigid, humiliation etched across his face like heat. Mom called that night. Her voice was small this time, stripped of its usual sharpness. "We don't know what to do," she said. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. You have to help us, please." Her panic, which would once have cracked me open, barely reached me now. "I'm not the one who pushed this that far," I said softly. "And I'm not the one who's going to pull him out." Silence stretched between us, long and unfillable, something she couldn't twist or weaponize. "Bailey, please," she whispered. "No," I said. "Not anymore." I hung up. Later that evening, HR from the tech company scheduled a private meeting. The room was small, lined with glass and soft light. They apologized again in person. Offered me the job, full salary, benefits, relocation package, and a written guarantee that any future interference from outside parties would be treated as harassment. It wasn't the apology that mattered. It was the recognition that my future had always mattered. When I stepped outside, the city air felt different. Wide, cold, clean. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Dad, tone strained, frantic, stripped of the confidence he'd worn all his life. I deleted it without listening. Walking down the street, I realized something simple and undeniable. I hadn't taken anything from them. They'd handed it all away themselves. The first morning in my new apartment felt unreal. No raised voices. No footsteps pacing the hallway. No tension coiling in the walls like electricity waiting to strike. Just quiet. Light poured through thin curtains. Soft and pale, nothing like the harsh bulbs at home. I stood barefoot on the cool floor, holding the mug Harper had lent me. Steam spiraled slowly upward, settling around me with a softness I hadn't known. For the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. My space. I traced the faint bruise on my shoulder, now only a shadow. It didn't sting. It didn't burn. It simply existed. Evidence of a moment that used to define me, now fading into something I could finally move past. A reminder, not a wound. Outside, the city thrummed alive. Cars humped below. Someone called a cheerful greeting across the street. A dog barked into the open air. None of it had anything to do with me, and that was the comfort. I wasn't the center of anyone's anger. I wasn't the problem to fix. I wasn't the scapegoat or the forgotten one. I was just a person starting over. I opened my laptop to an inbox full of onboarding documents, training schedules, welcome messages from people who knew me only for what I'd earned. They didn't know my family. They didn't know the walls I'd been thrown into, or the years spent invisible. They only knew my work, my interview, my skills. It was strange seeing a future built on my merits alone. Stranger still, realizing the weight of the past only once I'd stepped out from under it. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A text from Mom, "We need to talk." Then another, "Please." I let the screen dim. I didn't owe them a response. Silence was no longer submission. It was a boundary. I took another sip of coffee, watching the morning light brighten the small room. The city felt wide open in a way I'd never known. Every street, every sound, every breath belonged to a life that finally had room for me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next storm. I wasn't bracing for impact. I was free. Walking away had been the only thing I ever took from them. Every consequence that followed was their creation. Freedom didn't come from winning. It came from refusing to remain where I wasn't meant to grow. Some doors don't close behind you, they vanish the moment you stop knocking. If this story stayed with you, join our channel for more cold, silent, and cathartic family dramas. Share where you're watching from and the moment you first chose yourself.